Hello friends, welcome back to Innovations in Marketing of Innovations. And as we have been building upon the case about marketing of innovations, we are trying to understand some more nitty-gritties which are associated with this art. We tried to understand how different it is, why it is different, what are the elements, and I gave you a clue that I would be talking about flexible positioning and steering of product life cycle with reference to marketing of innovation especially, and we have been building upon the case around micro segments and targets, and I am sure you are actually putting up 1+1 kind of a methodology to learn this art of marketing of innovations. One very important thing which we realized when here we are trying to build up the case around marketing of innovations, and before we go to different elements of marketing mix with reference to marketing of innovation, especially in a narrative and storytelling form, we realize that before we build up that narrative and story, we must have a context of what is innovation, what are the enablers of innovation, how strategic is innovation, with special reference to marketing of innovations. And here I would build upon the case. You see, up till now you would have heard of, you would have learned of what innovation is fundamentally, but how to look upon innovation with respect to marketing of innovations by building upon the understanding of innovations in marketing. So, how to look at innovations at large, and that is precisely what we are going to do in this session, and we would be focusing upon some very important aspects and then some principles as well. So, here we would be talking about what is innovation, sources of innovation, enablers of innovations in subsequent session, and principles of innovation subsequent session, and then later on as far as strategy and innovation. But again the point is, all this is with reference to marketing orientation which we have built upon till now. And I will be going for those kind of narratives. For example, is Huggies and Pampers, they have innovated upon diapers? What kind of innovations they have done in case of diapers? How they have expanded the span of diapers for patients as well as geriatric cases, or let us say elders, and how they have innovated upon as far as the kids go, what innovations they have done. This is an interesting and remarkable kind of a thing. Basically, diamond industry, they have been doing so many innovations, pearl industry, they have been doing so many innovations, silver industry has been doing so many innovations, and so many, and all such kinds of forms of as far as industries they have been focusing upon innovation. But when they are focusing upon innovation, they are focusing upon marketing with respect to innovation. So, let us see how things are. So, what is innovation? And whenever we talk of innovation, always remember anything, and when we have talked about, is it a product, is it a service, we have talked about these kind of things, but whenever we are referring to anything as far as innovative perspective or process of innovation as such, here the mainstay is that we should be somehow linking it to market, and we should be conceiving that. And remember, in previous sessions I talked about design thinking element as well, wherein we try to build up this case of as far as the whole situation goes. But when we are thinking in terms of market, I wish for you to recall our discussion on substitution, alternatives and needs, and specifically we emphasized on unmet needs which the innovator or the marketer has to think about. Here I want to add one thing which is more relevant with reference to today's discussion as well. You see, we are focusing upon innovations, and it has a root in inventions as such, and how closely this the roots of inventions connecting innovations with market are traversing in the similar spirit, means that, for example, someone invented something basically, and then lots of innovations were being done on that fundamental invention. How closely it is linked with the invention's original perspective, innovator's point of view or inventor's point of view largely. How closely this thing which had roots in inventions is related to market orientation. How marketer is actually enabling himself or herself with reference to the original thought in terms of as far as the complete innovation perspective goes. And that is an important point. That is why I always suggest my students or participants to always look into the history of marketing of innovations, history of products and history of people associated with those kind of products. Who did what, how did they do that? Many a times organizations website you would find historical development in terms of 1870 they did that, 1880 they did that and so on. Seldom they talk about who were the people who did that actually. Fine, they just want to put up an organizational perspective around that, that is good. But again, if you dissociate invention and innovation with the person who has been involved with that or has been at the helm of the affairs, somehow the original thought somewhere diminishes at the end of the day. So, progression would be known, but thought would diminish. And here, ladies and gentlemen, the most important element is that thoughts should not diminish, thoughts should progress. We cannot leave aside progression from thoughts, we have to build upon thoughts on thoughts. That is the perspective. So, and here we go. Innovation is the process whereby new and improved products, processes, materials, materials and services are developed and transferred to a new plant or market where they are appropriate. That means we are trying to find out a fit. That means we have this perspective, but look at this. Somehow if we, I am not contesting with this definition of Albert Rubinstein, but somehow if we fit here the perspective of that transferred to a new plant or market where they are appropriate, and somehow we bring in the original thought here associated with that innovation, wouldn't it be good? If we, even if we are deviating from that thought, still it would help us in actually putting up the complete thought process around how to steer it now. And if we are somehow keeping up the pace with that original thought, basically that might be the point of differentiation at the end of the day, and that is the biggest question when we are talking of innovation and marketing of innovation. Differentiation is the key. Differentiation is definitely the key in almost every sphere, but here it is a major key. So, that is the most important element when we are trying to think in as far as connecting innovations with marketing sphere. What is the connecting perspective? Original thought. A new or improved product or process, another definition says a new or improved product or process or combination thereof that differs significantly from the unit's previous products or processes and that has been made available to potential users, product or brought into use by unit process. Now, this strengthens our argument. How would it differ from the unit's previous products or processes? Definitely, either a different thought process by the same person is involved who is the originator, or many a times different people are involved as far as the previous and the present products and processes are there. Otherwise, it is not that easy that this would differ. They say that it is attributed to teams and teams go for ideation and disruptive perspective, but there is a person who actually puts an instigative thought, an idea, and there might be another person who actually frames that thing into the complete value chain or value web, or there are many people, but they have individualistic thought process, and that is we must care for, because until unless we know that, and then you see we have been somehow putting this thing aside. Recently I was working on a research paper wherein we emphasized that text of marketing is actually putting aside the historical perspective with reference to the people associated with that theory or case or product or service or whatsoever, because until unless we know that, we do not understand, because when we know the person, when someone is visible in front of us, we can go into the historical progression of, you see, that is why we always talk about inventors like Thomas Edison basically, and Edison's perspective then is associated with the story, and then we get to know why Edison could do so much at the end of the day. How many other names do we remember? We remember so many names, but how many other names do we remember in terms of coding or software development or those kind of things? Okay, that is a non-disclosure kind of a perspective. There are so many IP aspects associated with that, but the point is, how would you know that this has been developed with this kind of a perspective, this kind of an element? What about mobile phones? What about other things? So, that is an element which we should not be losing upon. Look at this, letterbox, letter converting into fax, then mails, and then getting converted into almost instant messaging basically. But somehow I miss this too much. I am writing a book nowadays, and I have mentioned this in detail, that how much I miss as far as the context of this thing goes. And that is again a very important element of innovation which we must remember, in terms of marketing of innovation, which we must remember. If somehow we remain associated with the original point, if somehow we remain associated with the original thought process, the narrative, the stories around that product or service, then probably we could have used that, although it is progressing in terms of innovation. For example, this is moving towards this and this is moving towards that, but then we could have retained this with some different kind of an element. We could have used it for different kind of an element. We could have worked upon that somehow. Why not? Because this has been associated with a context, and here we do you feel same when you read a physical letter today, even today, and read an email? Do you feel the same? That is what I am referring to basically. And then how many times you repeatedly read emails basically? For example, letter from someone you love, your parents, or someone very closely associated with you. So how many times you go back to the messages to read message again, and then you deeply emotionally cry. I am not actually underestimating that thing basically, the message itself, but how many times repeatedly you go for and you think that, oh, this message contains those kind of emotions. Letters, people still do that. So there is a marketing aspect to it as well. That is the point actually. So innovation can be seen with both kind of perspectives. Oh yes, we have come a long way as far as this situation goes. I used almost all of them. Yes, I am not that ancient by the way, but this we had in our home also, this we had in our home. Yes, and this was my first mobile phone, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, no, second in fact, sorry. So that is the perspective as far as so innovation is the effort to create purposeful, focused change in an enterprise's economic or social potential, and that is what I am talking of. You see, this is the perspective where marketing comes in, and the marketer comes in, and the inventor comes in, and the innovator comes in as far as, and that is given by Peter Drucker with reference to. So let us build up the situation around this, and this is a very important article written by Peter Drucker in 2002, The Discipline of Innovation, and as you know, Peter Drucker is a very big contributor as far as the whole management literature goes. So Harvard Business Review, page number 95102. So now let us look into the sources of innovation with reference to, and you see, that is why I am referring to marketers and inventors alike. They are also the sources of innovation basically. So keep their perspective in mind, and let us look into the sources of innovation, and let us look into 4 or 5 elements as far as the sources of innovation goes. So purposeful systematic innovation begins with the analysis of the sources of new opportunities. Purposeful systematic innovation begins with the analysis of the sources of new opportunities, and that is what I am referring to. We would be referring to that context as such as far as the enumerated sources go, and Drucker contributes there. But here beforehand my submission is that if you are talking of sources of new opportunities, analysis of the sources of new opportunities, marketers, innovators and especially inventors. And how far the product or the present perspective of the product is from inventors to presently being marketed. We talked about warfarin, we talked about Teflon, we talked about so many things. They incidentally changed. We would be talking about those things at this moment as well, a few minutes from now. But again, if it changed, and if it changed for good, what good did take place, and if it wouldn't have changed, would it have been better? Have we analyzed this? And we are talking of analysis of the sources of new opportunities. Let us look at this. So most innovations, especially the successful ones, result from a conscious, purposeful search for innovation opportunities. Humans are the biggest opportunities as far as innovation opportunities go, which are found only in few situations. For such areas of opportunity exists within a company or industry, 3 additional sources of opportunity exist outside a company in its social and intellectual environment, and that is how Drucker explains this in this article, and lots of text is available on similar things. We have chosen this article specifically to highlight the context built up by so many authors as far as on this sphere goes. So, sources of the company: unexpected occurrences, incongruities, process needs, industry and market changes. Prominently, somehow the narratives behind such kind of elements, if you talk into how did it happen, some names would definitely be mentioned by organizations, but my submission repeatedly here is, if somehow we could have retained that kind of a perspective associated with an individual or team of people, then it would have been extremely different. And this happens alike in as far as academics go. Authors we remember for a while who become popular, but people who designed courses, for example, do we know about what kind of a thought process they had when they were designing for example, civil engineering fundamental courses? It became standardized, understood, but how to go further? Many times courses and text and sources of knowledge, they become slightly, I would not say obsolete, knowledge never gets obsolete, this is a wrong notion about it, but it diminishes somehow. And if diminishes, the need for that particular text diminishes somehow, because somehow we did not know the context and we could not build upon that context, we could not revisit that context. And that is why whenever we look into rural based innovations somehow, and I talked about forest bioresidue based innovations and those kind of things, and I have been moving around rural areas for n number of years, somehow when you look into the construction, for example, somehow we separated first the originators, the inventors of that kind of a construction, that went into narrative, became standardized. Then when something related to its replacement came in, without understanding the context, we replaced, taking it as innovation. For example, the housing methods or the construction methods we had in Himalayas, in hilly areas especially, wherein winters the houses were slightly warm from inside, and summers they were not so warm from inside, and they had those kind of roof style and so on. Several kinds of things and several standardized procedures were there, wherein the house would be comfortable and good without any external support. When this was replaced by this contemporary construction of thin walls or this kind of a roofing and those kind of things, and we did not analyze the pressure on the soil and those kind of things. Today we have all the scientific methods in analysis, but when these kind of incidents they come in, that house fell in, and recently we have seen that in Himachal Pradesh and in Uttarakhand, so many things are there. We can attribute those things as far as to this kind of a loss of originator's perspective somehow, and that is somehow devastating when we look at these kind of things. So, unexpected occurrences, incongruities, process needs, industry and market changes belong to sources within company, and sources outside a company, demographic changes, changes in perception and new knowledge. But here my addition and submission, without any without extending any disregard to what the article says, just to add my thought process here, the originators and the people associated with this kind of a thing basically, and I will just write P here. So, that will demonstrate that need for that kind of a thing. Now let's visit these things one by one briefly, and then in this session and subsequent session I would be continuously talking about these kind of things along with the principles of innovation as such, but with the perspective of marketing and innovation and marketing of innovations. Remember this, we are referring to these kind of examples as I, for example, housing and the perspective associated with housing changed the complete ambit of the tourism industry in Himalayas. If somehow we would have retained that construction, tourism industry would have been quite different. Okay, we constructed modern hotels and those kind of things, but is it helping anyways? No, it is not helping, and it has been proven. It helped for a while, let us say 3-4 decades, but now it is not helping that way. So, and today people are again going back to homestays and those kind of things and modernizing the structures which were ancient, and people are enjoying staying there and so on, and somehow it is taking a larger industry shape now. Are we going to construct similar kinds of houses just to attract similar kind of tourism now? Probably yes. So, we could have not overlooked that, and that is why we would be taking such kind of examples and choosing such kind of examples. So, unexpected occurrences, the first element from sources within company. What is the easiest and simplest source of innovation opportunity? The unexpected. As the author says, unexpected successes and failures represent highly fertile grounds for innovation opportunities because they are often ignored, discounted or met with resistance by most businesses. And this, the important thing is successes and failures. Take detailed account of all these kind of things, and also please revisit this session which we talked about, where we talked about the insight development, wherein connections, contradictions. So, you see, successes are associated with connections and contradictions as well, and failures are also associated with primarily contradictions and connections many times, then coincidences, and this is here unexpected occurrences are talking about coincidences as well, and that is why Gary Klein's contribution in seeing what others do not is very important for us. So, unexpected occurrences. During the early 1930s, IBM introduced the first modern accounting machine tailored for banks. They had a particular target in mind and they had a particular usage in mind, which was good. IBM is one of the largest contributors in as far as the hardware, software and this industry goes, and solutions industry for that matter. So, however, in 1933 banks refrained from buying new equipment, whatever reasons they had. What rescued the company or what supported the company was its exploitation of an unexpected success. The New York Public Library expressed interest in acquiring a machine. They were modernizing themselves, they were actually progressive. In contrast to the banks, libraries had money during those early New Deal years. The libraries were sought after kind of places, people used to visit those, people used to love sitting there and so on. And Watson managed to sell over 100 of otherwise unsaleable machines to libraries. It itself unexpectedly happened. Someone got to know that this is coming up, why not to use this. We may say that someone, again you see here is the point, who was that someone actually who thought about this, and how, who was at IBM who was thinking in terms of somehow collating that change. So, this is a narrative which we talk about in IBM and New York Library, but New York Library is not thinking, IBM is not thinking, someone is thinking, and how these people they are coming up, what is their background, how did they look about that, what were the incidents, who are the protagonists, that is an important kind of a thing, and I am building upon a case around this basically. So, a decade and a half later, just when the general consensus was that computers were primarily engineered for intricate scientific tasks, a surprising shift occurred as the business sector expressed a keen interest in device capable of handling payroll processing. UNIVAC, possessing the most advanced machine at the time, initially disregarded business applications. Who was disregarding? You see again, and then here I am not going on the humorous side, but sometimes I personally feel anxious about this. Okay, I might not be that aware, there might be papers and articles which are specifically mentioning that, although we could not find so many. So, but again the point is we have a systematic account of those kind of things. Many historians they have been writing on what happened within organizations. They are not mentioning specific, except for leaders, they are not mentioning details of people. Probably we have to take permissions from the organizations and so on, and there are several procedures associated with that, and organizations are not so keenly interested in naming people except for the top leadership. They have their own good reasons which are valid. But the point is how to look into those kind of details. So, however, IBM swiftly recognized the potential for an unforeseen success, redesigned what was actually UNIVAC's machine for these mundane uses like payroll processing, and within 5 years established itself a front runner in the computer industry, a position it continues to hold even today, one of the largest contributors as far as the whole situation goes. This is one of the incidents, but again here, though it happened unexpectedly, a marketing thought process in terms of right positioning in the evolving segment with the right pricing match, with the right distribution perspective and improvisation in the product was going along. So, this is not only talking about how unexpected element was the source of innovation here, and as I am saying, human element is missing from this narrative, but somehow unexpected occurrence as the source of innovation with marketing thought process. That is how we should be actually talking about this. So, post-it notes. The post-it note story of success is a classic example of how a product's unexpected journey led to tremendous innovation and commercial success. In the late 1960s, Dr. Spencer's Silver, here comes the name, and that clarifies many thought processes. And if you Google about Dr. Spencer Silver, a chemist at 3M, was attempting to create a super strong adhesive for aerospace applications. However, what he developed was the opposite, a weak adhesive that would stick to surfaces but could be easily removed without leaving a residue. Working on something, came up with something, and it was commercially used and became so valid 1960s to till date. You know what we are talking about. This, you have this everywhere around you. So, initially this weak adhesive seemed like a failure as it did not fulfill its intended purpose for aerospace projects. For years, Silver and his colleagues at 3M struggled to find a practical application to adhesive, and they were thinking in terms of marketing here. Because what they were doing, they were finding a practical application. This application could only be found with the right marketing approach. So, the breakthrough came when another 3M scientist, Art Fry, attended one of the Silver's seminars in 1974. Fry sang in his church choir and was frustrated with the paper bookmarks falling out of his hymns during rehearsals. He realized that Silver's weak adhesive could solve the problem. A need came in, that was an unmet need, and this unexpected event brought in something, and those were being matched, but this matching description happened incidentally. What we are talking about is the matching of things systematically, and that is where marketing of innovations come in, and that is what we are trying to learn. We should not be waiting for that incident to happen where the match comes up. So, he realized that Silver's weak adhesive could solve the problem. Together they began experimenting with the adhesive and developed a prototype of what would later become the post-it note. 3M launched the post-it note as a product in 1980, and it initially faced skepticism in the market. However, they started distributing free samples to office workers and the marketing story starts, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. People found countless creative uses for these handy removable notes, and somehow it became successful. When we say somehow, in these kind of cases, it is always there is a scope for saying somehow, but what we are trying to learn here in this subject, ladies and gentlemen, that marketing innovation, at the end of the day, we should not be saying somehow, we should be saying we made it happen through our understanding of marketing of innovations, by having a pre-understanding of innovations in marketing, because somehow we read this subject. I will be coming back to you with lots of insights on other elements in terms of sources of innovation and principles of innovations with reference to marketing. Till then, goodbye.